The Kytharian military academy buzzed with energy. Cadets marched through the imposing halls, their segmented exoskeletons glinting under harsh, flickering lights. The air hummed with anticipation and the metallic scent of Forge World technology. Massive machines loomed in the background, their dark, angular designs casting shadows over the training grounds, which reverberated with the clang of metal on metal. Today marked a historic shift. High Command issued a new mandate: study human warfare. The Kytharians had always seen themselves as the pinnacle of military might. They thrived on strength, honor, and the clanking of their brutalist machinery. A human battle manual rested on each desk, its pages worn and filled with tales that felt ancient and primitive. Cadets shuffled through the manual, glancing at illustrations of humans wielding makeshift weapons. Karax, a senior cadet, tapped his metal fingers against the desk. His segmented eyes glimmered with disdain. "Look at these tactics," he scoffed, his voice low and mocking. "They charge without armor, without fear. True warriors respect strength." As he spoke, his fellow cadets nodded, their laughter echoing in the chamber. To them, the humans appeared weak. The Kytharians trained in heavy assault formations, their tactics rooted in overwhelming firepower and siege warfare. They built massive war machines designed for destruction. To see humans try to fight with sheer numbers and courage struck them as folly. Karax flipped through the manual. The stories told of battles fought long ago where humans surged against powerful foes. He read about the legendary Siege of Earth. Despite the odds, humans fought fiercely, some sacrificing themselves for victory. The very thought seemed ridiculous to him. "Imagine charging into battle with no hope," he said, his tone dripping with derision. "What kind of combatant would do this?" Yet, beneath his bravado, a flicker of curiosity ignited. He felt a pull, a curiosity about a species so different from his own. Karax glanced out the window at the training grounds below. Cadets were honing their skills, practicing maneuvers with massive war machines. The sight of dark metal, with red-orange energy cores pulsing, stirred pride within him. But something nagged at him. The humans faced death with a certain spirit. Karax couldn't quite understand it, nor did he want to. The Academy's towering spires cast long shadows as the sun dipped below the horizon. Darkness enveloped the grounds, but the training continued. Holographic simulations flickered to life. Karax and his fellow cadets prepared to engage in their first exercise, pitting themselves against simulations of human tactics. They donned their combat gear, the cool touch of the armor comforting against their warm exoskeletons. The hum of the simulation machines filled the room. Karax felt alive, his heart pounding with anticipation. The exercise began. They faced ghostly images of human soldiers charging towards them. Karax directed his squad, issuing commands with certainty. The Kytharians unleashed a barrage of firepower. Heavy artillery roared to life, and the sound of explosions cracked through the air. Flashes of light illuminated the dark training chamber. Their confidence soared, victory was within reach, but as the simulations progressed, something unexpected happened. The human soldiers fought on, even when overwhelmed. They didn't retreat, they pushed forward with a reckless tenacity that Karax found bewildering. "Why don't they yield?" Karax murmured, his brow furrowing. His fellow cadets exchanged uneasy glances. As the simulation continued, they faced wave after wave of human soldiers. Each holographic figure displayed unyielding resolve. Karax felt his pride begin to falter. The humans fought through pain and injury. They charged, disregarding their own safety in pursuit of victory. "Their tactics make no sense," Karax growled, anger flaring. "They should know when to give up." Yet the determination displayed by the faceless soldiers intrigued him. With each simulation, he felt a change. This was more than just combat. It was a reflection of something deeper. Waves of frustration surged through the cadets. Their previous laughter faded, replaced by confusion. The Kytharians were trained to see strength in sheer power, but this didn't fit their worldview. The very concepts of combat they revered felt threatened by human resilience. Karax stared at the flickering simulations, the vibrant display contrasting sharply with the muted tones of the academy. The images of humans battling against impossible odds began to burrow into his mind. He felt a strange mixture of respect and fear. Why would they do this? Karax pondered silently, grappling with thoughts that conflicted with his upbringing. The Academy's teachings celebrated strength above all. Yet here, before him, lay a hidden truth. Humans fought for more than just survival. They fought for each other. Tonight, as Karax lay in his quarters, the echoes of the battle simulations played through his mind. The images of fearless human soldiers haunted him. He couldn't shake the sense that there was more to these beings than the primitive tactics he had mocked. In the silence, Karax made a silent vow. He would discover the strength behind their resilience. This journey was just beginning. The galaxy's computers might not process human logic, but he felt a spark. Humanity was more than they appeared, and it was time to learn. The Kytharian Military Academy hummed with activity and energy. Cadets filled the large room, their segmented exoskeletons gleaming in the harsh, fluorescent lights. Above them hung a massive digital screen displaying human battle footage. This was part of their new curriculum. They were to dissect the strategies of a species they viewed as primitive. But today, they would uncover something unexpected. A voice echoed through the room, deep and commanding. The instructor stood by the screen, an imposing figure with a heavyset frame and intricate armor. His eyes narrowed, focusing on the footage of human soldiers. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air, sharp and unsettling. The Kytharians leaned in, ready to dissect what they perceived as flawed strategies. As the first scene began, the Kytharians watched humans struggling through a chaotic battle. They saw soldiers wounded, dragging themselves across the blood-soaked ground. Broken bones, torn uniforms, and the stench of smoke filled the atmosphere. Yet amid the despair, the humans pressed on. They fought with grit and determination. The Kytharians exchanged glances, confusion etched on their faces. What's wrong with them? One cadet whispered they expected fear, a retreat, but instead the humans advanced. The scene shifted to a group of soldiers taking cover behind crumbling walls. They were battered but unyielding, overcoming pain and exhaustion. Karax, the senior cadet, felt a knot in his stomach. He had always believed that strength defined a warrior, but what he saw challenged that belief. The instructor pointed at the screen. These humans, despite their injuries, do not surrender. They push forward, fighting for a cause. Heavy, mechanical sounds surrounded them as the Kytharians activated their simulation machines. These machines were massive, built for heavy assault formations that mirrored their doctrine of overwhelming force. They were confident. The Kytharians believed that any simulation would show them emerging victorious against these so-called warriors. As the simulation began, the Kytharians faced digital humanity. The simulation depicted a human platoon besieged by a Kytharian assault unit. The Kytharians barreled forward, confident in their tactics. They unleashed a barrage of fire. The digital humans fell, yet others stood firm. They used the chaos to regroup, forming an unbreakable line. Karax's brow furrowed as he watched. They're not backing down, he thought. The tightness in his chest grew. The simulated battle played out before them, each moment revealing an unexpected truth. The humans were relentless, fighting as if victory was worth any cost. The Kytharians expected the humans to break under pressure, yet they did not. The sounds of war and destruction echoed in the simulation chamber. The Kytharians could feel the heat of their weapons, the vibrations of each explosion thrumming in their bodies. They trained for years to crush their enemies, but these humans were different. They fought for something beyond survival. As the simulation continued, Karax's pride began to falter. He watched as humans stood injured, defying the odds. They pushed through pain, their eyes fierce with determination. Why? He wondered. Why would they risk everything when defeat was certain? The concept of human tenacity was foreign to him, a puzzle he couldn't piece together. Days passed as the cadets engaged in discussions about their findings. Each day, they watched more footage. Each scene revealed a new layer of human resilience. They witnessed soldiers running into chaos, sacrificing their safety for comrades. The Kytharians had never seen such dedication. This was not the mindless bravery they had expected. Karax led their discussions. Their tactics are reckless, he argued. They put themselves in danger for others. But what is the cost of this foolishness? But each time he spoke, a flicker of doubt crept into his mind. Deep down, he wondered if strength was truly just about power. His convictions were shaken. Kytharian ideals of honor and combat efficiency were being tested against the backdrop of human willpower. One evening, Karax sat alone in the training room, replaying the footage in his mind. The sounds of battle echoed in his ears. He thought of the humans, battered yet unbroken. The flickering images haunted him. He felt admiration rising within him, a strange feeling that made him uncomfortable. Am I too rigid? He thought. The question lingered in the air, heavy and strange. The days of dismissing humans as weak were fading. He knew the Kytharians valued strength above all. But these humans fought with an intensity that was both admirable and frightening. Simulations became a daily ritual, each session revealing more about the humans' tenacity. They watched a group defend a position, knowing they could lose everything. The Kytharians could hardly comprehend this resolve. They fought on, even when the odds were stacked against them. The sound of clanging metal and explosions filled the simulation room, contrasting with the silence of the Kytharian cadets. They were baffled. The hum of the machinery surrounded them, but the energy in the room was different. It was charged with uncertainty. Then came the pivotal simulation. Karax led a squad to challenge the human tactics they had witnessed. The simulations ran at full capacity, the screens displaying every detail. The Kytharians charged, confident in their overwhelming firepower. They expected to crush the human forces easily. But as the simulation unfolded, the Kytharians found themselves outmaneuvered. The humans fought back with an unexpected ferocity. They adapted, countering Kytharian moves with a creativity that caught Karax off guard. The realization hit him hard. Humans did not fight like Kytharians. Their resilience transcended mere tactics. Karax clenched his fists, fighting back frustration. His pride as a warrior was being challenged. He had prided himself on his understanding of combat. But these humans were revealing truths he had never considered. They fought with a deeper purpose. The sound of their victory in the simulation felt hollow. The Kytharians had won, but at what cost? They had underestimated the enemy's spirit. Days turned to weeks. The Kytharians struggled to reconcile what they learned. Confusion filled the academy halls. The thoughts of honor and strength tangled with the idea of sacrifice and determination. Karax felt torn between two worlds. He was beginning to understand that humans possessed a resilience that Kytharians had overlooked. As he stood before the screens, he knew this revelation would change everything. The Kytharians had entered the academy thinking humans were weak, but with every simulation, every analysis, that belief crumbled. The Kytharians were learning that strength was not just about power. It was about fighting for something more, something deeply human. Karax did not know where this journey would lead. But one thing was clear: Their understanding of strength and honor was about to be forever altered. As the lights dimmed, he felt a new determination spark within him. The galaxy's computers might struggle with human logic, but Karax and his fellow cadets would no longer underestimate the heart of humanity. They would learn, adapt, and embrace the complexities of this unexpected adversary. The journey of understanding had only just begun. The Kytharian military academy felt electric. Cadets gathered in their dark, angular training room. The heavy machinery hummed, a constant reminder of their world. Karax stood at the front, eyeing the large display screen. Footage of human soldiers played in a loop. The room was silent, the only sound the low thrum of machinery and the occasional scrape of armor against metal. As they watched, the Kytharians began to notice something unusual. Human soldiers fought not just to win, but to achieve their mission. Karax narrowed his mandibles, confusion flickering in his eyes. The Kytharian way was simple strength and self-preservation. They expected humans to retreat when faced with danger. Instead, the footage showed soldiers sacrificing themselves for the greater good. Each act was calculated, yet the cost was stunning. The display illuminated scenes of chaos, explosions, smoke, and the sharp crack of gunfire. A human soldier shielded a comrade, taking a fatal shot. Karax felt an unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Honor was for the living, yet here was proof of a different kind of courage. The room buzzed with whispers of disbelief and awe. Karax raised his arm. "We must discuss this," he commanded, his voice steady but laced with urgency. He turned to his fellow cadets. "Why do humans risk so much? What drives them?" The cadets leaned forward, captivated. They considered their own code, the Kytharian ideals of strength and survival. One young cadet, Drax, spoke up. "It's madness. They throw away their lives. Honor is to survive and fight again." "But what if their survival means nothing?" Karax countered, feeling the weight of his own words. "What if the mission is greater than the individual?" He sensed a shift in the room. The cadets exchanged glances, questioning their own beliefs. The next video played, showing a unit advancing through fire. The sounds were chaotic: gunfire, shouts, and the thud of bodies hitting the ground. A soldier fell, but shouted orders, rallying his team. Karax felt the air thicken. The Kytharians trained for victory, but the humans fought for something else, a bond, a purpose. As the footage continued, they witnessed more acts of sacrifice. A soldier, wounded and barely standing, pulled a comrade from the line of fire. He fell, but the mission succeeded. Karax's heart raced. This was not merely heroism. It was a profound commitment to each other. The Kytharians were taught to hold their strength above all else. But here, strength was redefined. "What is this?" Drax asked, bewildered. "Is this their courage or their weakness?" Karax pondered in silence. The room was filled with tension as he replayed the scenes in his mind. It struck him. Human courage tied to camaraderie, a sense of unity. They were willing to go beyond their limits, even if it meant death. It was a lesson wrapped in sorrow and bravery. The Kytharians were taught to fight as individuals. Each warrior had to prove their strength to earn respect. But they had never faced an enemy with such dedication. The Kytharians respected strength and power, not the selfless sacrifice of a team. As he observed his fellow cadets, Karax saw the challenge in their eyes. They were struggling to understand. "Perhaps we have not looked deep enough," Karax suggested. "Their bravery might be linked to their values." He spoke slowly, letting the idea settle. They placed the mission first. "We have much to learn." The room grew quieter. Cadets began to realize the complexities of humanity. Karax felt a wave of empathy wash over him. He moved closer to the display, feeling the heat of the machinery surrounding them. The images were powerful. The noise felt almost alive. He replayed a sequence: men and women fighting for a cause, pushing forward despite the odds. Karax could see what the Kytharians lacked: a willingness to share their burdens. Each human soldier fought not just for themselves, but for their comrades. The Kytharian doctrine seemed increasingly narrow. As the discussion continued, Karax sensed a shift in the air. The cadets began to respect the tenacity of humans. The room buzzed with new ideas. Battles were no longer just about strength. They were also about unity and shared goals. Drax raised a question, but can we use this? Can we learn from them? Karax hesitated, considering. We must adapt. If we continue to fight as we always have, we will miss something important. Humans have shown us that strength is not just in power, but in purpose. We can embrace this change. Excitement filled the room. The cadets began brainstorming ways to incorporate human tactics into their strategies. They discussed how teamwork could enhance their strength. Karax felt a spark of hope ignite within him. The Kytharians could grow, evolve, and learn from the humans. As the session ended, Karax realized this was only the beginning. He felt a mix of respect and frustration towards humans. They had qualities that challenged everything the Kytharians had been taught. The concepts of mercy, sacrifice, and camaraderie swirled in his mind. Outside, dawn broke over the forge world. The air was heavy with the scent of burnt metal, a familiar aroma that usually brought comfort. But today it felt different. The sun rose over the harsh landscape, illuminating the dark, angular architecture of the academy. Karax stepped outside, breathing in the metallic tang of the morning. He stared at the swirling clouds above, contemplating the revelations of the day. The humans had opened a door to new possibilities. The Kytharians were strong, but did they have the courage to change? As the sun glinted off his segmented exoskeleton, Karax understood that true strength lay in adaptation. The Kytharians could learn from their enemies. They could grow beyond their rigid ways. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had much to offer. In the days to come, he would lead his fellow cadets into new simulations, experiments that would test their understanding of what it meant to be a warrior. Karax felt the weight of his journey ahead. With every step, he moved closer to bridging the gap between their worlds. The sun rose higher, and hope glimmered like a beacon in the dark. The Kytharian military academy buzzed with nervous energy. Cadets gathered around a massive projection screen. The sight of a new simulation flickered to life. This time, the Kytharians were prepared to confront the unexpected. The earlier simulations had revealed something unsettling about humans. Now, they were ready to dive deeper. Karax stood at the forefront, his segmented exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. He felt the weight of his duty pressing down on him. The previous revelations haunted him. Humans did not just fight with tenacity, they also fought with a surprising ferocity when backed into a corner. The simulation began. The screen displayed a battle scene. A human unit, outnumbered and battered, stood against overwhelming odds. Karax watched intently as the humans fought. They were not merely defending themselves. They were advancing, adapting their tactics with every passing moment. As the scene unfolded, the Kytharians noted a shift in the human unit's strategy. The humans moved with chaos and purpose. They used their surroundings, taking cover behind rubble. Some climbed high to gain vantage points. Others executed flanking maneuvers, drawing fire away from their comrades. The Kytharians exchanged glances, their initial confidence cracking. The sound of heavy weaponry echoed in the room. Explosions lit the screen. The air thickened with tension as the cadets absorbed the sight of human sacrifice. Each time a soldier fell, another stepped up. They fought with a reckless abandon that made the Kytharians uneasy. To the Kytharians, this did not align with their doctrine of self-preservation. Karax's heart raced. He understood that the humans became more dangerous when cornered. They fought harder, driven by some deeper instinct. It was a brutal display of human nature that intrigued him. Why did they choose to push forward, even when defeat loomed? Was this strength or madness? The simulation ended. Silence filled the room. The Kytharians stood in awe, processing what they had seen. Karax felt a fire ignite within him. He turned to his fellow cadets, eyes bright with determination. They needed to understand this new aspect of humanity. He proposed a new simulation based on the very tactics they had just witnessed. "Let us test our strength against their unpredictability," he declared. The cadets nodded, their previous arrogance replaced with curiosity. They were ready to learn. The new simulation began. Karax and his team deployed heavy assault formations, just as they had done before. Yet this time, they anticipated unpredictability. The humans were no longer just targets. They were opponents who would fight back fiercely. The scene erupted into chaos. Kytharian war machines rolled forward, their engines roaring. But the humans were already in motion. They darted through the ruins like shadows, exploiting every weakness in the Kytharian formation. Karax watched, fascinated and frustrated. How did they adapt so quickly? The air crackled with energy. The Kytharians unleashed their firepower, a beautiful display of their technology. Yet the humans dodged and weaved, their movements filled with desperation. Karax recognized their strategy. They turned fear into action. It was a dance of survival. Suddenly, a human soldier threw an improvised explosive. The explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying. Karax's forces staggered. The humans pressed on, charging without hesitation. They clashed with the Kytharians, and for the first time, Karax felt the weight of uncertainty. As the simulation continued, Karax noticed a pattern. The humans fought together, sacrificing individual safety for the unit's success. It was a level of cooperation he hadn't expected. They cared for each other in ways that transcended mere survival. Karax felt a pang of something unfamiliar. The simulation concluded in a flurry of noise. Karax's heart pounded in his chest. The Kytharians had lost, but this loss was not just in battle. It was a loss of their previous beliefs. The rigidity of their honor and strength crumbled under the weight of human ingenuity. In the aftermath, Karax gathered his fellow cadets. They huddled together, discussing the chaos they had just witnessed. They were no longer dismissive of humans. The discoveries they made shook the very foundation of their training. Karax felt a growing weight of responsibility. He stood at the center, his voice steady. "We cannot ignore what we've seen. Humans do not just endure, they innovate under pressure. Their desperation becomes a weapon." Karax's words hung in the air. The cadets nodded, understanding that the humans had something they lacked. Each cadet pondered this revelation. They replayed the simulations in their minds. The Kytharians had always relied on overwhelming force. Now they faced an unexpected complexity in their opponents. What once seemed predictable now appeared unpredictable and powerful. The scent of heated metal filled the air as they debated. The machinery hummed around them, a reminder of their lineage. Yet now they stood at a crossroads. Would they cling to their old ways or adapt to this new understanding? Karax felt the shift within himself. The Kytharians could not simply overpower humans. They needed to learn from them. Adaptability was a strength. The honor of a true warrior might lie in understanding one's enemy, not in conquering them outright. With renewed purpose, Karax led the cadets toward the training ground. They needed to rethink their strategies based on what they had learned. The Kytharian doctrine would evolve, just as they were evolving. As they walked, the heavy clang of machinery resonated. The world around them shifted, and for the first time, the Kytharians considered a future that did not rely solely on brute strength. They were ready to embrace the unpredictable nature of humanity, even if it terrified them. It was a beginning, a new chapter in understanding. The Kytharians' view of combat was changing. They were no longer just warriors. They were students of a complex and resilient species. The galaxy held mysteries, and humanity was one of its greatest. And in that realization, Karax found hope. The journey ahead promised more revelations. Perhaps, together, they could forge a brighter path through the stars. The room was thick with tension. Karax stood at the front, a flickering light from the massive projection screen casting shadows on his segmented face. Around him, cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The final simulation had been unlike anything they had seen before. It was a stark contrast to their earlier projections. The humans, cornered and battered, fought with a ferocity that was unsettling. The Kytharians had always believed that true warriors fought for honor. They had valued strength above all. Yet here was something different. Humans viewed death as a cost, a number on a ledger, a necessary sacrifice for victory. Karax took a deep breath. He remembered the simulation from earlier. He recalled the scene where a human squadron faced overwhelming odds. They stood against towering war machines, their backs to a crumbling wall. The sounds of chaos filled the air, explosions, screams, and the whir of incoming fire. With every blast, Karax felt the weight of the humans' resolve. They were not merely fighting for survival. They were fighting for a cause. As he reviewed the footage again, he noticed the small details. The way one soldier, battered and bleeding, turned to shield another. This was more than tactics. It was a bond, a fierce loyalty that pushed them to act, even against certain death. The Kytharians had always fought for themselves or their kin, but these humans fought as one. A murmur spread through the room. Cadets exchanged glances, their confidence shaken. Karax raised a hand. He needed to guide them through this revelation. "They fight without fear," he began, his voice steady. "But it is not only bravery we see. It is their willingness to sacrifice everything for each other." The rapid clicks of the simulation's controls echoed in the quiet. Karax paused, taking in the faces around him. The once proud expressions were now laced with uncertainty. He reflected on his past thoughts. How could one respect a species that showed such disregard for their own lives? But now he felt something else, something he had not expected. Respect. The next simulation commenced. This time, it showcased a mission where humans faced impossible odds. They charged, weapons blazing, but their numbers thinned quickly. The screen displayed their losses in stark detail. Yet the mission succeeded. They achieved their target, leaving behind a trail of sacrifice. Karax felt the air grow cold around him. He turned to his fellow cadets. "We believe we understand combat. Strength and fortitude guide us, but what they possess is a different power." He let the words hang, allowing them to sink in. Their tactics, their very essence, lie in their ability to think beyond their own safety. The simulation ended, and the room fell silent. One cadet shifted, breaking the stillness. "But it's reckless," she whispered. "They throw their lives away. How can that be honorable?" Karax shook his head. "It may seem so, but their actions reveal a depth we lack. It is this bond, this camaraderie, that turns ordinary soldiers into something remarkable." His heart pounded. He wanted his fellow cadets to understand. Humans did not fight for mere victory. They fought for each other, for ideals larger than themselves. He pressed on, urgency rising in his chest. "Think about our battles. We conquer with overwhelming firepower. But these humans, they adapt. They find new ways to win, often through desperation. They are unpredictable." He could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were grappling with a new reality. Karax paused, weighing his next words. "What we see as weakness, compassion, loyalty, can also be strength. They refuse to give up, even when faced with the abyss. They rise again and again, sometimes at the cost of their lives." The cadets' eyes widened, their perspective shifted subtly. They began to see that these humans, beneath their fragile skin, held an indomitable spirit. Karax felt a spark of hope. Perhaps they could learn from this. The lights flickered, and the sound of droning machinery echoed in the distance. Karax knew they stood at a crossroads. They could cling to their old ways, or they could adapt. We must evolve, he declared, his voice stronger. We must embrace their tactics and understand their logic. The galaxy is vast, and we cannot afford to ignore their strength any longer. With this, a new energy stirred amongst the cadets. The fear that had once gripped them was replaced by a sense of purpose. They were no longer just Kytharians. They were students of a greater truth. Karax felt a shift within himself, a bond forming with his fellow cadets. They were all part of something larger than themselves. As the session ended, Karax glanced at the projection screen one last time. In the flickering light, he saw not just footage of battles, but a reflection of humanity's spirit. It burned bright, and for the first time he understood why. The galaxy's computers could not process human logic because it was not just logic. It was something far more complex. It was heart. Karax stood in the center of the academy, a heavy silence enveloping the room. The bright screens behind him flickered with the results of their recent simulations. The Kytharians had spent weeks analyzing human tactics. Every revelation from those studies reshaped their understanding of warfare. The cadets now saw humans not as weak, but as unpredictable warriors. Their new strategies merged Kytharian strength with the surprising adaptability of humans. Karax felt the weight of his leadership. He knew they had to change. The old ways of thinking could lead to defeat. The Kytharian doctrine was shifting. No longer would they only value raw power. They began to see the strength found in sacrifice and creativity. Those qualities marked humanity as a worthy opponent. The air in the room buzzed with energy and uncertainty. Karax called for a council, a meeting that included human strategists. This was unprecedented. Kytharians had always been solitary in their approach to war. Now they would invite collaboration. The thought of sharing tactics made some cadets uneasy. Yet others felt excitement. They were stepping into the unknown. At the council, Karax observed the humans. They moved with a confidence born from their experiences. Discussions flowed freely, filled with laughter and heated debates. Their ideas sparked new strategies that fused Kytharian might with human ingenuity. Karax felt pride. It was an exhilarating moment together. They mapped out a path forward, building a bridge between two cultures. As weeks passed, the Kytharians prepared for joint exercises. The heavy machinery of the academy hummed with life. The scent of burnt metal filled the air as new tactics took shape. Karax thrived in this environment of growth. He found strength in compassion, understanding, and creativity. The Kytharians began to embrace what they had once dismissed. In this new alliance, Karax stood tall. He was a warrior who now understood the depth of humanity. Strength went beyond brute force. It was resilience, creativity, and the willingness to learn from one another. The galaxy was changing, and so were the Kytharians. Together, they would redefine what it meant to be strong in the face of adversity.